Welcome to the deep dive.
Great to be here.
So imagine this for a second. What if alien life isn't, light years away somewhere out there, but maybe it's right here, like under our feet, or maybe even swimming in that lake you drove past today?
That's the core of what we're talking about.
We're diving into this really mind-bending idea called the shadowbiosphere.
Right.
The possibility that there are life forms on Earth totally different from us that we just haven't noticed.
It really challenges everything, doesn't it? I mean, our whole picture of biology is built on, well, DNA, carbon, water, the familiar stuff.
Exactly. Life as we know it. But is that the only way life can be? That's the big question.
It is. Are these universal rules for life everywhere, or just, the way things happen to turn out for our branch of the tree of life? The shadow biosphere hypothesis basically says maybe not.
Okay, so in this deep dive, we're going to unpack this. It's a fascinating idea. We'll look at what the shadow biosphere actually means.
Yeah, the nitty-gritty.
We'll definitely talk about that whole arsenic life story.
Oh, yeah, the monolake saga.
Yeah.
Controversial, but important.
Super important. And we'll get into why we might have missed these things, assuming they're real.
The how could we be so blind question.
Pretty much. And where might they be hiding? We'll speculate a bit there.
The potential hideouts.
And crucially, why finding something like this would be such a massive deal.
A complete game changer. Absolutely.
And then finally, how we might actually find it. What tools could help us peek into this potential hidden world.
Sounds like a plan.
All right. So first things first. What is the shadow biosphere, fundamentally?
Okay, so brass tacks. It's the idea, the hypothesis really, that Earth could host life forms that operate using a completely different biochemical system than us, than everything we currently recognize as life.
Different biochemical toolkit. I like that. So we're talking like really different, not just a weird bacterium, but...
Potentially, yeah. Radically different. Think about our genetics DNA, right?
Right, the double helix.
Maybe shadow life uses something else entirely. A different molecule to store information. Sometimes people call it xeno-DNA. Xeno meaning foreign or strange.
Okay, so a different instruction manual. What about the building blocks? We're carbon-based.
That's another big one. Maybe they're not. Maybe they use a different element as their structural backbone. The classic example people bring up is silicon, since it's right below carbon on the periodic table.
Silicon-based life. Straight out of science fiction.
Well, it's theoretically possible, though challenging. But the arsenic idea you mentioned earlier, that's another key example. Arsenic is chemically similar to phosphorus.
Which is crucial for our DNA and energy transfer, ATP and all that.
Exactly. So the idea was maybe some life could use arsenic instead of phosphorus.
Wow, okay. Any other wild possibilities?
Oh, sure. People speculated about life based on different solvents, not water, or even like really out there concepts. Organisms living within intense energy fields, somehow metabolizing that energy directly. Stuff that's hard to even wrap your head around biologically.
And the kicker is, this isn't necessarily life hiding on Mars or Europa.
No, the hypothesis is they could be right here, coexisting with us.
Where? Like literally next to us.
Could be. In the soil, deep oceans, extreme environments like salt lakes.
Yeah.
Maybe even inside other organisms, as symbionts or parasites we haven't recognized as being fundamentally different.
That's unsettling. Okay, so this isn't just fringe speculation. There's actual scientific thought behind it.
Oh, yeah. The term and the cohesive concept really got a boost from a paper back in 2009. Paul Davies and colleagues published it in Astrobiology.
Signatures of a shadow biosphere.
That's the one. It really laid out the framework, asking, okay, if this exists, how might we actually detect it? It pulled together a lot of threads that astrobiologists and others had been thinking about.
So it formalized the idea for wider science.
Pretty much. It made it okay to ask these what-if questions in a rigorous way.
Which leads us perfectly into the arsenic life story. Mono Lake, California, 2010.
Right. Felisa Wolf-Simon and her team, funded by NASA no less, published this study.
And it hit the headlines everywhere.
It really did. They claimed they had found a bacterium strain, GFHA1, in the high arsenic environment of Mono Lake that could apparently substitute arsenic for phosphorus in its, even in its DNA.
I remember the buzz. It seemed like the proof of concept for alternative biochemistry, a real microbe doing this incredible thing.
Exactly. If true, it was monumental. Evidence that life could use fundamentally different building blocks, maybe suggesting a separate origin of life, or at least a really, really weird evolutionary path. The paper came out in Science in 2011. Huge deal.
But there's always a but in science, isn't there?
Often, yeah. especially with extraordinary claims. The scientific community immediately jumped on it, trying to replicate it, scrutinize the methods, the data.
And what happened?
Well, the consensus that emerged pretty quickly based on further research by other groups was that the original interpretation wasn't quite right.
So no arsenic DNA.
It seems not. While the bacterium is definitely incredibly tolerant of arsenic, it thrives in monolake, which is full of it. The evidence that it was actually swapping out phosphorus for arsenic in its DNA backbone didn't hold up. It seems it was just very good at dealing with arsenic, maybe sequestering it, but still relied on phosphorus for its core functions.
Ah, okay. So a fascinating extremophile, but not quite the biochemical alien we thought.
That's the current understanding, yes. But here's the thing. Even though the specific claim about arsenic DNA was largely refuted, the whole episode was incredibly valuable.
How so?
It forced a massive public conversation about alternative biochemistries. It made scientists really think hard. How would we know if we found life that's different? What would the evidence look like? How could we be sure? It kind of legitimized the search for truly weird life.
So it failed as proof, but succeeded in opening minds and refining the question.
Exactly. It highlighted the challenges and, maybe paradoxically, spurred more interest in looking for a real shadow biosphere.
Okay, which brings us to the big puzzle. If this stuff exists, maybe even alongside us, why haven't we found it? We sequence genomes constantly, we probe environments. It seems like something should have popped up.
That's the crux, isn't it? And the most likely answer is we might be looking with the wrong tools or through the wrong lens. Our methods are overwhelmingly designed to find life that looks and acts like the life we already know.
Bias tools. Okay, give me some concrete examples. How could our standard lab stuff miss shadow life?
All right, take DNA extraction. The kits we use, the chemicals, they're optimized to bind to and pull out molecules with that specific DNA sugar phosphate backbone.
Right.
If shadow life uses xenodNA, a totally different genetic molecule with a different structure, our standard kits might just wash away. It wouldn't stick.
Okay, makes sense. What else?
TCR, polymerase chain reaction. It's how we amplify tiny bits of DNA to study them. But it relies on primers, little starter sequences that match known DNA. If the shadow organism's genetic code is completely alien, our primers won't bind. PCR just won't work. You get nothing. Silence.
So no amplification, no detection, even if it's there.
Precisely. And then there's something as simple as sterilization. Think about how we clean equipment or prepare samples. High heat, harsh solvents.
Standard lab practice. Kills bacteria, fungi.
Kills known bacteria and fungi. What if shadow life is built differently? Maybe it thrives at high temperatures that would destroy our proteins. Maybe the solvents we use to break down cell membranes don't affect its equivalent structure at all. We could be inadvertently eliminating our evidence before we even look.
Wow, we could be wiping it out without a clue, that quote. Wasn't it Carol Cleland, the philosopher of science? Something about absence of evidence?
Yes, that's the one. Absence of evidence is not evidence of absence, especially when you're using the wrong tools. It's from a paper she co-wrote back in 2005, I think.
Really sums it up, doesn't it? We can't conclude it's not there just because our, as we know, its detectors don't ping.
Exactly. We need to be aware of our profound detection bias.
Okay, so if we suspend disbelief for a moment and assume it is out there, where are the best places to look? Where might this shadow life be hiding?
Well, based on what we've been discussing, a few types of places seem like good candidates. The obvious ones are extreme environments.
Like monolake, ironically.
Like monolake, yeah. Or think hypersaline lakes, super salty places where most life struggles. Deep-sea hydrothermal vents with their weird chemistry and high pressures, acidic hot springs, places that are just plain tough for standard biology.
The idea being that maybe alternative biochemistry gives an advantage in those niches?
That's one line of thinking. If you don't compete well with normal life in temperate environments, maybe you find your foothold where normal life can barely survive.
Okay, extremophiles plus catch. What else?
Another really intriguing, maybe slightly creepy idea is that they could be living inside other organisms.
You mentioned this earlier, like in us.
Potentially. Or other animals, plants, microbes, as parasites or symbionts. Think about the human microbiome. Trillions of microbes in our gut, on our skin. We're still discovering new known types of microbes there. Could something biochemically alien be mixed in, undetected by our DNA-focused methods?
That is wild. Talk about hidden passengers.
It's speculative, of course, but possible. Then you just have the sheer vastness of environments like soil and the deep ocean. They're incredibly complex ecosystems. Scientists sometimes find weird chemical signatures in soil or ocean sediments that don't quite match known biological processes.
Hints. Anomalies.
Maybe. Could be unknown normal biology, or could it be something else? And one more. High radiation zones.
Like Chernobyl.
Exactly. We know some organisms, like certain fungi, actually seem to thrive there, maybe even using the radiation somehow. While likely still DNA-based, their resilience points to biochemical capabilities we don't fully understand. Could extreme resilience sometimes hint at fundamentally different underlying mechanisms? It's a possibility.
So it sounds like they could be in harsh places, hidden places, or just places that are so complex we haven't fully mapped them yet.
Pretty much. And layered on top of that is the possibility that they might just be hard to spot characteristics-wise. Maybe they're incredibly small, maybe they grow extremely slowly, maybe they're chemically quite inert most of the time.
Not exactly waving a flag saying, here I am.
Not at all. They might leave very subtle biosignatures, if any, that our current methods would overlook.
Okay, let's shift gears a bit. Why does this actually matter? I mean, it's a cool idea, finding alien life on Earth, but what are the real implications if we found a shadow biosphere?
Oh, the implications are profound, absolutely revolutionary. I mean, think about it. Finding a second independent form of life here,
Yeah.
it would strongly imply that life isn't some unique, near-miraculous fluke. It would suggest that the origin of life, a biogenesis, might have happened multiple times just on our own planet.
A second Genesis.
Yeah.
Right here.
A second genesis. That completely changes the game for the probability of life elsewhere in the universe, doesn't it? If it happened twice here in our little corner.
Then maybe it's happening all over the place. Maybe life is like a cosmic imperative, not a bizarre accident.
Exactly. We might be dramatically underestimating how common life is simply because our definition, based only on our example, is far too narrow.
It challenges that idea that DNA and carbon are the only way, the universal constants of life.
Precisely. It would throw open the doors to understanding what life can be, not just what it is here. And beyond the philosophical, think about the practical breakthroughs.
Like what?
Biotechnology. Imagine harnessing enzymes or metabolic pathways from a completely different biochemical system. New materials, new chemical processes, and medicine. Understanding alternative biologies could give us incredible insights, maybe new ways to fight diseases or repair tissues. Even space exploration, knowing what else life can look like, would transform how we search for it on other planets.
It really reframes everything. We spend so much time looking up and out.
When there might be a whole second biology right under our noses.
Yeah.
You called it existential science earlier, and I think that fits. It touches on fundamental questions about who we are, where we came from, and whether we're alone. It's way more than just curiosity.
Okay. So the stakes are huge. How do we actually find it then? If our current tools are biased, what are the new tools? The tools of discovery for something we barely know how to define.
Yeah, that's the challenge.
Yeah.
We need to move beyond just looking for DNA and proteins as we know them. We need more agnostic approaches.
Agnostic life detection,
Meaning methods that can detect complexity or patterns indicative of life without assuming a specific biochemical basis, like pushing metagenomics further.
Metagenomics, sequencing all the genetic material in a sample.
Right. But moving towards techniques that don't just rely on amplifying known DNA structures. Maybe looking for any kind of complex information-carrying polymer, regardless of its exact chemical makeup, searching for patterns, repetitions, complexity itself.
That sounds hard. Like finding a needle in a haystack when you don't know if the needle is made of metal or straw.
It is hard. Another really powerful tool could be advanced mass spectrometry.
Measuring the precise mass of molecules.
Exactly. If you meticulously analyze all the molecules in a sample, you might spot compounds with masses or isotopic ratios that just don't fit with known biology, weird lipids, unusual amino acid analogs, maybe molecules incorporating unexpected elements like arsenic or silicon, if you tune the instruments right.
You might see chemical fingerprints of a different metabolism.
That's the hope. You're looking for the biochemical anomalies.
Yeah.
And processing all that data, that's where AI comes in.
Artificial intelligence. Makes sense. Too much data for humans to sift through.
For sure. AI could be trained to recognize patterns that deviate from the biological baseline we expect, spotting subtle statistical anomalies in massive data sets from soil, water, air. That could be key to flagging samples for closer investigation.
So smarter analysis of complex data.
And thinking beyond Earth, too. Future missions to Mars, Europa, Enceladus. They need to carry instruments designed with this broader perspective, not just looking for DNA or specific Earth-like lipids, but capable of detecting a wider range of complex molecules or metabolic signatures, casting a wider biochemical net, essentially.
It really all comes back to shaking off our Earth-centric bias, doesn't it?
It does. We have to be genuinely open to the possibility that life could be profoundly stranger than we've imagined, and we need to design our search strategies accordingly.
Okay, so wrapping this up. We've gone from this mind-bending idea of hidden life to the nitty-gritty of detection. Let's just leave our listeners with those core questions again.
Yeah, the big what ifs.
What if Earth isn't home to one biology, but two or more? Independent origins running in parallel.
What if the aliens aren't out there, but right here? Unseen, unrecognized, operating by completely different rules.
And maybe the most humbling one. Have we already encountered it, seen its effects, maybe even held it in a sample tube and just missed it? Lacked the framework to understand what we were looking at.
It's a lot to think about. The possibility that our planet is even stranger, even richer with life than we ever dreamed.
It certainly stretches the imagination, a powerful reminder that there are still deep mysteries right here at home. Thanks for taking this deep dive with us.